Flosstube. It is Helen D, and today we're doing something different. Today we're doing a Q&A. I just recently hit 20,000 subscribers, which completely blows my mind, and I've never done a Q&A. So I thought this would be a good time to do that. I put out the call, I got a ton of questions. We'll go through them today. This video required a lot of gathering. There's things in here that have not been pulled out for quite some time. Hopefully I remembered everything. One thing I lost, it'll show up, and hopefully I have places to put everything when we're done. So, Emmy will not be seen. She's in the garage. She was being uber annoying and wanted to be in the garage. So there she is. And then I shut the door. So she's shut in the garage for a little while, sniffing all the things. Pepper's around, she might come down. So I thought we'd launch in. I had some background questions, some questions about like favorite things, technique things, finishing things. I organized them as best I could. So thank you for everyone who asked questions. I've been doing Flosstube since I believe it was December of 2017. And you know, people join you at all different times. So there might be something that, yeah, I know I've talked about, but if you hadn't watched back then, you wouldn't know. So we will zip through. I do have lots of things to show. So that's good. And then I have to go put them all away. That's not good. My husband was coming down to make tea and I'm like, oh, you're going downstairs? Can you bring these? And then he came back up and then he forgot something. I'm like, oh, you're going back downstairs? Can you bring these? So hopefully everything is here. So we will start in. Very basics. Helen D. Helen Daly. I live in Maine with my husband and my son. 47 years old. I think I was 38 when I started these or something. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. My son was in 3rd grade. He's now a sophomore in high school. So several people wanted to know kind of a tell us about yourself. And Mary Lou asked, you know, college stuff, corporate world, what I did kind of before this. So I was born and raised in Maine. I went to school in Vermont. I went to college in Vermont in the Northeast Kingdom. It was Lyndon State College when I went there. It's gone through several name changes. I believe it is currently Northern Vermont University. I think. It's been a thing. I went to study broadcast journalism or communications, and specifically they have a fantastic on-air television program. They do live broadcasts twice a day. They have a fantastic meteorology program where they get to practice on air. So that's why I chose that school. And my degree is in communications. I don't use that anymore, but I did for a long time. I graduated in 2000. And then I worked at a TV station, WMUR, in Manchester, New Hampshire. And then when I moved back to Maine, I worked at WCSH Channel 6 in Portland. And I worked overnights for a good long time. I think it was like 7 years total that I worked kind of the 3rd shift, midnight to 9, 11 to 8, right? It depended and varied. And I produced our morning broadcast. So the broadcast that comes on like from 5 to 7, there are people that are working all night to get that together. Not a lot of people, just a couple. So the producer of a TV program is the one that kind of organizes everything and puts everything together. We keep track of who's doing what, reporter-wise, fill in little spots with extra stories and kind of make it flow. And most importantly, end on time. That's the big thing. Our professor, when we were in college, Tom Brokaw, was hosting Nightly News, and he used to say, you have to end on time because you can't just tell Tom Brokaw to wait, right? If your show ends at 6:28:30, you have to be out at 6:28:30 for the commercial break to run, for the 6 o'clock news to start. So that's what I did. I got done, my son's first day of kindergarten was my last day. And it should have been a few years before then. Things had changed and I just wasn't enjoying it. I wanted to be seeing him grow up, not at work at all these odd hours, because at that point I was working days on a news magazine show that the schedule was one day it was like 8 to 4 and the other it was noon to 8 and it switched. And because I had regular producing experience. Anytime someone was out, I got tapped to fill in. It was just not enjoyable anymore. And I looked for other jobs and I couldn't find any. And finally the time came that I'm like, can I just quit? Will we be okay if I just quit? And then we'll see if we're okay. And if we're not, I'll go work wherever, right? But someplace local, because it was about a half-hour drive. So I just quit. It was great. And I did a little like per diem freelancy stuff after that, but for the most part, I've just been home and it's worked out well. My husband, John, he does, another question was, what does John do? He does computer stuff. That's about all I can say because I don't understand it. He mostly does software development, but I think his current job is different. And he's been working at home since the pandemic, since COVID. He was working at a local company and was working from home, and then he ended up getting done and he's doing remote things. He works for a company in Illinois right now. So he's right above this room in what used to be our croffice, the shared office craft room, but is now just an office. So when I stayed home, it allowed me to do all the driving and the being where we needed to be, and he could just focus on work, and it's worked out well. So Maria, how did you get started and how has your stitching style evolved? And a couple other people, what was your first cross stitch project? When did you start to stitch before making Flosstube? I remember being taught to stitch when I was really young. My mom and both of my grandmothers and a couple of my aunts, everyone's very crafty. I have a giant family, first of all. My dad is one of 10. My mom is one of 4. I have 35 plus cousins. It's a big old crew of us. And there's a lot of crafty people in there. So my dad's mom used to come over for lunch every Sunday. We'd have Sunday lunch and then she'd stay for the afternoon. And she was prolific with her crafts. And she would make handmade mittens every year for Christmas for all of the grandkids. She would do different cross stitch, different plastic canvas because it was the 80s, and she would do the same piece for all of the grandkids like multiple times. And between her and my mom, they taught me how to cross stitch. I don't remember my absolute first project. It's nothing I have. I did a lot of plastic canvas magnets from Lee Gerard's books. I know we had a farm animal book, and I bet we had all the farm animal magnets in plastic canvas on our fridge. We had very little places to buy things from. We had a Zayres, which then became Ames, and Michael's finally came in when I was in high school. So we didn't have a lot of options. One thing I did dig up from the archives, I made this, my grandmother had made them too, and that's probably where I got the pattern, but this is it's a box. So this is a dirty plastic canvas box that I made. Could use some cleaning. It was in the basement. So it was this kind of stuff, right? It was the 80s. It was geese and teddy bears and plastic canvas. So that's kind of how I started. And then I remember vividly that my grandmother got my sister Donna and I each a kit that was 2 little cross stitches that were finished in round frames, like hoops. Mine had dogs on it. Donna's had cats on it. Donna finished hers. I messed mine up so bad. I'm sure that thing got thrown away because I was off. I think I was trying to do all one color so I didn't have to switch my needle a lot. No. Then some of the other things I did was just whatever I could find. Like I said, my mom had some old kits. I remember doing one that was like a house in a little valley with 1,000 French knots, and my grandmother put all the French knots in for me. So the other one that I have pulled out, I stitched when I was younger, and then through school and stuff you don't as much, and then especially college you're busy. One of the summers when I was home from college, at that summer I worked 3 jobs, 3 little part-time jobs, and one of them was on the weekend for the Maine Bureau of Tourism, and it was basically answering the phones when people were calling in to request brochures, because We sent out brochures then. Now you just find it online. So if you called the Maine Bureau of Tourism on a weekend in the late 90s, I may have sent you your brochure. And while I was there, I pulled this kit out from my mom's. She had this dresser in the attic that had some kits in it. And I said, I'm going to work on this because it was very boring. And it was huge. This is the largest thing at that time I'd ever stitched. I didn't know if I'd finish it. I didn't finish it that summer, but I did finish it that year of college. So this is an old kit. I don't know the name. It was probably these Arts Dimensions, right? It's one of those, came as a kit. It's bunnies. And I stitched and stitched and stitched this. And then when I got it done, my mom got it framed for me. This is the first thing I've ever had framed at Michael's, because that's what we have. And that is my first large piece. I still put it out like at Easter. This one doesn't. Let me put it this way. So that's kind of how I got started. Looking back from when you picked up stitching, what do you wish you had known that you know now? You're allowed to change things. I had a kit. I did the kit. If it was certain colors, that's what I did. I didn't know that you could just change the colors. I think the first piece I changed the colors on, and I didn't grab that one, was a piece I did for our wedding. That was a kit, and it had pink flowers in it, and I made them purple. And that was a big deal to me. So yeah, that's kind of one of the things I know is don't be afraid if you love something to change it into something you really enjoy. I got back to stitching majorly. Like I said, I did the bunnies in college, and then after I graduated college, I was working overnights, and I did a lot of stitching then. And that's right, when you're out of college, that's when a lot of your friends start getting married. I had, and it might be upstairs, it is in tatters at this point. I had this book that I had picked up that was cross-stitch wedding samplers. I bet this one sampler, I bet I stitched that 10 times. If you got married in the early 2000s and we were friends in real life and you invited me to your wedding, you probably got that cross-stitch that I put on straight sticky board, shoved in an 8x10 frame from Michael's. I found this one frame that I really liked, and every time I was in there with my coupon, I would buy one. So everyone's is the same. And it kind of became such a joke that for my wedding, my best friend from college stitched it for me. So it is this piece. Looking back, honestly, I think it's Joan Elliott. I think last time I found the book, I'm like, oh, I've never stitched a Joan Elliott. And then I saw this and it's like, oh wait, I've stitched this Joan Elliott 10 times. And I remember I also stitched just the flowers once for a girl at work, a woman at work. Her middle name was Rose. So I have this that I didn't stitch, which was nice. And then from there, I just kind of stitched here and there. I did, well, my sister got pregnant with her first. I made a stocking and a birth sampler, and then she had 3 more kids. So I made 3 more stockings and 3 more birth samplers, and for my son. And I love making stitched ornaments. My grandmother always had a lot of handmade ornaments, and they've been passed down. So I have some plastic canvas ornaments that she made that I'm always happy to put on my tree. So, what crafty skill do you wish you had? I wish I could draw. I'm not a very good drawer. I just don't have that skill. And a couple of people asked, are you a reader? What are your favorite books? I enjoy reading, but I can't read and stitch. So I stitch instead. I know I could listen to audiobooks, but I stitch. We have a room above our garage, and that's where my son hangs out, and that's where I hang out. And he talks a lot. So I can't always concentrate on things. In a book you'd need to concentrate on. I watch Flosstube videos and stuff because, if you miss something, it's no big deal. But for a book, you'd need to be able to hear the book. So I'm not sure if I have any favorite books. I can't really say. I don't think I do. Like, I enjoy reading, and there's some that I'll pick up and read, but not as much as I probably should. So, favorites section. A lot of people, ooh, I forgot to turn the heat off, which you wouldn't think it'd be on today, but that must be the water heater. A lot of people wanted to know favorite stitches or favorite designers, and that is incredibly difficult to choose, and I don't know if I could choose. I brought down several favorites, and they might be favorites for different reasons than you might think. I will say, designer-wise, I couldn't pick a favorite, but I could tell you that the ones I've stitched the most are probably Hands On Design, Heart and Hand, Frosted Pumpkin Stitchery. I haven't stitched one of theirs lately, but I've stitched a lot of them in the past. Bent Creek, Erica Michaels. If you consider each berry its own Erica Michaels piece, I've stitched a lot of Erica Michaels. So those are kind of some that I've done the most. So I brought down some favorite things. Although before we do that, because it's on top, I had a question from Candace about Max Pigeon of Pigeon Coop. She says, what draws you to Max Pigeon's designs, and do you have a favorite? Max Pigeon of Pigeon Coop Designs is a newer designer to me. I've known about his stuff for a few years. He does a lot of very nature-based pieces, and for some reason they just call to me. They're fun to stitch. I love his design element of using a lot of negative space, and I just enjoy them. Of the ones I have stitched, this one is my favorite. This is called Atlantic Shores. He's done a series of eco regions, and this was from, what do you call it? Might have just been the East Coast. This, to me, this is Maine. This is what our shoreline looks like with the pine trees and the waves and the rocks and the rocky coastlines. So I stitched this last summer. Loved every stitch. It was very relaxing. I would just kind of do it in rows, and it fit in an 8x10. This is an 11x14 frame, and this mat I just bought right at Michael's, and it happened to be exactly the right colors. So this hangs in my bedroom. So I'm not sure why I'm drawn to them so much. I just am. I think that's how it is with a lot of pieces, right? Like, something about it just draws you to it. So here's some, in no particular order, favorite things. All right, and I have to do them in a way that I can put them someplace. On the top, I stitched this. I found this mirror. It was a mirror that the mirror part was in here, and it happened to be on with clips. So I knew that I could take the mirror out. This was at Joann's, and I'm like, I need to stitch something for that. And I had this chart, which is Autumn Lane Stitchery. I think it's called Halloween Night. And I stitched it on a 14 count so I could get it as big as I could. It still would have been too small for this frame, so I mounted it on some fabric. I just love this frame. And I think the bats work really well with the piece. I love stitching Halloween on purple. I didn't change anything. I did. This, I think, outer color was supposed to be like a brownish, and I made it straight black. So that is one that I just love. That heat's taken longer than I thought it would. I apologize. Our heater is very loud. I don't know why. It seems to be louder than other people's heaters. All right. A few small things. I love this one. This is a Prairie Schooler. It's from the July book, and it's just the top part of the sampler, right? It had words. I just did the top part, and I changed every color in here, and I just love how it turned out. It's very kind of faded. My husband made me this knot to tack on to the bottom. I just think it came out well. And it's funny, this was one of the earlier things I finished. This is kind of a much squishier pillow than I finished now. I've gotten so I make them much tighter. So that's always fun too, when you pull stuff out and you're like, oh, that looks a lot different than it would have if I had finished it now. So that one. This was my first berry. So it's has some special meaning. It was the first time I tried it. I've learned an awful lot since then. This is a free chart from Erica Michaels. It's on her website, it's still free. I will try and link it below. And I loved that she did this during COVID, it was the Stay Home and Stitch, which this one says Stay Home and Stitch. It was great to have one that it didn't cost me a thing. I used a scrap of fabric and I was able to just pick my colors and figure out the construction. My berry finished very well. My toppers have improved. So that one is really special. Another small finish that I love, I did these trees from Hands On Design. This is called the Tree Lot. This is one that is special to me because I had a vision and it worked. Sometimes you have a vision and it doesn't work, but I had a vision and it worked. So these are place card holders that I bought on Amazon that have little tree stumps on them. And I finished her tree as a tree on the stump, and I just think it's adorable. I put just another Button Company pin up there. I think it worked really well. So that's another one that's just works for me. Now there's outside noise today. Everything's happening today. All right, so the other ones I have here are all framed. Everything is framed, and they're special to me for different reasons. This giant one is on top. Oh, I'm gonna have to go shut a door. All right, hold on. I'm not gonna stop you. I'm just gonna run down there and shut the door. Just a second. Hopefully that will be a little quieter for us. There's always something in my neighborhood, and today it's wood chipping. Okay, this piece. I made this when I had my son, kind of as his birth sampler. I didn't do a traditional sampler for him with weight and date and all that. I did this, and the reason was, I was thinking, because this doesn't have any of those specific things, it could be passed on, right? If he has children and wants to use it, it will be perfectly fine to use anytime down the line. This was a DMC kit that I had to order in from Europe, and I have no idea any of the details. It's like hippos and lions, and I did this piece, and then I did a second one, which is a coordinating that has a big hippo and a big lion and a bunch of leaves, and you just put their name in it. So that one couldn't really be passed on, but this one could. All right, so that's a big one. A couple other things. This is a little bent creek. I think it's called Gobble because it spells out gobble. This one is special to me because it was the first piece I did on hand-dyed fabric with hand-dyed floss. My friend Felicia, who stitched the wedding piece for my birthday one year, ordered it from 123 with the stuff. It is stuck on a piece of sticky board. That's how I finished then. Is it how I would finish it now? No. But it's gotta be at least 10 years old and it's still going strong. So that one is kind of special to me because I tried something new, right? These next two are special to me because my son designed one and my husband designed one. We have what I affectionately call the nerd wall, where I've done a whole bunch of stitches that are kind of video game related, and they're all in one area, which used to be where they would go to play games. Now, ironically, it's right where my stitching area is. So I stitch under the nerd wall, but my son designed this piece, and this is Stardew Valley, one of the cats, and all the legendary fish. So he went through, and pixels are easy, right? Pixels are kind of an easier thing, but he chose every one of those colors from my color card and, you know, really kind of matching, and put so much time into this. I loved it. I love stitching it up. It is on the nerd wall. And then the other piece, my husband charted, And this is Final Fantasy, the Chocobos, and the Final Fantasy theme, one of the themes. So again, he went through and he did kind of all the different sprites that they would have in the video game, and we went with the yellow, the traditional yellow, and then like this kind of pinky, because that's one of the colors that they sometimes are. This one I stitched on an Ada, because at that point that's all I was stitching on, and all of those music notes have half stitches in them, 3/4 stitches actually, and they were not overly enjoyable, but I love how it looks. That one lives on the nerd wall as well. And then the last one for this kind of favorites is cardinal points. This is Long Dog Sampler Cardinal Points, designed for the Gentle Art. It uses Gentle Art colors. I started this for the Long Dog Leap Day Sal in 2020, right before COVID. I got a good start on it, and then when COVID came, I could not focus on such a big piece. I ended up doing a whole bunch of smalls. So then it was kind of like, this piece reminds me of when I kind of came out of things and was able to focus more and get back into all the color changes. So that's why I put 2020 to 2022 instead of just the 1 year, because this really, it took me that long, and it's kind of a good reminder of that period of time. So those are my favorites. How have your tastes changed in what you like to stitch over the years? Absolutely. I started with what I could find, right? It was Dimensions kits. It was whatever Michaels had, and it was always a kit. I didn't really find just charts until much later. I mean, I was out of college, early 2010s, when I kind of found 123 Stitch, I found Etsy, I found that you could buy just the chart and then just pull your own materials and make it however you wanted. So yes, they have changed definite from some of the things I stitch. Now, another question is, what type of projects do you find yourself most drawn to? I mostly stitch seasonal things because I stitch so much, I don't have room for everything. So in order to be able to have more stuff that I can show, if I stitch it seasonally, then it comes in, it goes out, it comes in, it goes out, and I kind of rotate through. Although, as you can see, some of these pieces that really mean a lot to me, they're framed because they're up all the time. I love color. I love pieces with a lot of color. That's why I love Satsuma Street and Emma Congdon and people that are not afraid to use 20 different colors in a project. I don't mind changing floss colors now. Back in the day, that was not my favorite thing to do. I don't mind that. So, techniques. Let me just move some of this stuff because I need this bag for this. Okay. How do you protect your stitching when you move your Q-snap? I just grabbed one project. It will work for a couple different things. All right, I use a grime guard. Yes, I did make these. There's some tutorials. I just Googled cross-stitch grime guard and found one, and I made, I don't know, I have 5 or 6, and I've used the same ones. I throw them in the wash when they need a wash. So under my Q-snap, I prefer a Q-snap to a hoop. I don't know why, it's just what I prefer. I used to use a hoop. Sometimes I would find with a hoop, it would leave a hoop mark that was harder to get out. And I find with the Q-snap, it doesn't do that as much. Also, I like things tight. And the Q-snap, to me, I'm able to get them really tight. So when I put my edges on, I just have a piece of felt, the regular craft felt, that I put on right on there, and then I snap it on. This kind of protects if there's some stitching under it from getting snagged. I've never had a problem with things getting crushed. It also sometimes can make it a little easier to pop on and off, right? I just push it. I just push the edge and it pops off. So that's kind of how I protect, I guess. my stitches. Any tips for getting creases out of Aida? No, but I'd love to hear them. Like I said, switching to a Q-snap to me helped with creases. I find less creases. I also find, I've done some finishing for friends. Personally, linen holds a crease like you would not believe. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the makeup of the material. That stuff is rough. But I iron it. I iron it with steam. If I think it's something that might bleed, I have just a piece of fabric, white fabric, that I put over it. I've never had a problem with that, fingers crossed, but that's kind of how I do it. And then I've found that if I'm finishing something as like a soft finish and I'm using interfacing, when I iron the interfacing on, sometimes that helps. And if I'm lacing something, I can pull it tight enough that helps too, kind of pull the little extra ridges out. So, how do you manage DMC for projects? I am a bobbinator. I know people love floss drops and they've switched everything to floss drops, and that would drive me crazy. I would not be a fan. I like the compactness of my bobbin boxes. So if I have a piece that has a lot of DMC, like this piece, this is called Dino Garden. It's by Una Buena Pieza. I don't know how many it has. It has this many. By using the bobbin, I'm able to, oh, now they're mowing lawns too, you guys, it's everything today. I put everything on one of these big rings, and that way everything's compact. I personally like to make, just out of, this is a file, like a manila folder. I cut out a little strip, I punch holes in it, I label them. I try and remember to put what the project is. I don't always. You know, if one of them kind of rips through, I can slap it on the other side. And then I just take off a little piece of this on here. And you see all this? This is why I can't use floss drops, because they get like this with like all your thread. So that's how I do it. If I have a piece that has more than this, I have some of those smaller floss boxes. I think I have 3 that I will put them in there so that it's not this giant wad. This is about the max of what I would do on a ring. I have a few pieces that, like I said, if it's more than this, I put them in my small box, and then I keep that on my shelf. Snow Queen has her own box. Nature's Journey that I'm doing right now, the Stitch Along, that has its own box. So I have 2 or 3 that kind of have their own box. So it just makes it a little easier. How did you get started stitching on Lugana or even weave? When I started, I only did Aida, and I love Aida. Aida has come a long way since the stuff I did in those kits. Hand-dyed Aida, fantastic. I love a soft Aida. Some people don't, I do. When I first started Lugana, I picked a piece. Picture This Plus is one of my favorite Aidas because of the softness. I picked a piece of Picture This Plus Lugana, and I'm like, I'm gonna do this. And it was a dark gray, and I was stitching a prairie schooler, and I could not see it. Now I've learned, Picture This Plus Lugana is very tight. I still really don't use it. It's very tight, and it was a dark one. It was hard to see. I gave it to my friend Cheryl. I'm like, here, you can finish this. She's like, you have half of it done. I said, I know, but I hate it, and I'm never gonna work on it. So the next time I tried something, I bought a 25 count Lugana because the holes were much bigger, and I bought just a regular Zweigart 25 count. It's probably platinum or mushroom, so that I could see the holes easier. Now, did it make my piece giant? It sure did, but I could see it. This particular piece is a Bent Creek, and all these rows are specialty stitches. And by doing it on this 25 count, I was able to really see to be able to do those stitches. I have really bad vision. I'm not gonna stitch on a 40 count. I don't even really like 20 count or 18 count Aida. I prefer 1428, 1632. That's just personal preference, or 25. So this is 25 with 2 strands over 2 squares. So that's what I would suggest. If you want to try a linen or an even weave, try something big and then work your way down, or work your way up, I guess. If you try the larger squares, you'll be able to see it better and get used to stitching over 2 instead of 1. And then you can, adjust your fabric as you go. So that's how I did it. That's why I have, it's not up here now, but in the winter, I have that piece that hangs here. That's the forest piece from Rosewood Manor that's only available in that book. It is huge because it's on 25 count, 2 over 2. How many strands of floss over how many squares on the different Adas? I prefer dense stitching, not dense. I don't like see-through stitches. I don't like the primitive more look, personally. So I tend to use 2 strands. The only time I don't use 2 strands is if I'm working on a fabric that is a higher count, so the squares are smaller. Sometimes with 2 strands, it gets really tight and it's hard to stitch. I typically use 2 strands on a 14 or a 28, a 16 or a 32, an 18 count Aida, depending on the dyer. I've never done a 36 count even weave or like higher than that. If I'm stitching on 25 count, this one, I believe, this is 2 strands over 2. Sometimes I'll use 3 strands over 2 on 25 count if I want something to be a little more dense. That's completely personal preference. On a darker fabric, I find I use the 3 so that you really can't see it through it. A lot of people use 1 strand on 36 count, 18 count, and higher. And then the 32/16, it's kind of half and half. Some people prefer 1 strand, some people prefer 2. It's really just what you prefer the look of and what you prefer stitching with. I don't prefer stitching with 1 strand because I find it breaks and it's just too thin for my liking. So that's why I tend to go with 2 strands. When you do projects on different counts, do you use 1 size needle or change sizes? That makes sense. I typically use a 26 needle. I prefer Bowen 26. I will mostly use that for everything. A lot of people, again, if you're using the higher counts, you want a thinner needle because the holes are smaller. So a lot of people will use a 28 on like 18 or 36 or 40 count. I do use a size 24, which is a bigger, fatter needle when I'm doing perforated paper. Mostly just perforated paper because a lot of times on that, I like to use 3 strands for the coverage, and 3 strands just goes into that a little easier. So, how do you use Pattern Keeper and anything you'd like to share about it? Again, can someone share with me? I probably don't use it very well. I'm not overly technologically advanced. My husband back-ended our Kindle to get Pattern Keeper on there. So it doesn't always work the way I think it should, but I like it because I can zoom in, you can mark off your stitches, and it keeps track of kind of how far you are. That's nice to know if you're getting close. There's a whole bunch of tutorials out there on Pattern Keeper that would be way better than anything I could tell you. So I would suggest just searching Pattern Keeper tutorial, Pattern Keeper tips, because it's 9 out of 10 times I can get something in there, but sometimes I just cannot. I also have Markup RXP on the Kindle. I've never once used that. Again, it was kind of back-ended on there. It just does not work. I can't get it to take anything. So it is what it is. All right, finishing. How did you become such a skilled finisher? Thank you. I just practiced. There was nothing special. The next question was, how and when did you get started finishing? Did you have a project that had instructions or take a class? I just figured it out. You can't frame everything, or I couldn't frame everything. And some of the smaller things, I would see people do pillow finishes and different finishes, and I just figured out how to do it. I watched a whole bunch of tutorials. Vonna Pfeiffer has fantastic tutorials. There's a lot of great tutorials out there. And I would watch different ones and then kind of adapt them to work for me. Some things I do a little differently. That's kind of all it was. And I mean, I don't have a fancy sewing machine. I have a $100 sewing machine that does, 27 stitches, and I've only ever used 3. So the more I did it, the better I got. That's all I can say. I know finishing can be intimidating because you put so much time, right? You're stitching something and you put so much time into it. You don't want to mess it up. You don't want to cut it wrong. I've done that. I've cut through something before because it was underneath something else. Like, we all make mistakes. We all do things and then are like, well, that didn't really work how I wanted it to. If you're starting finishing something and you're nervous, my suggestion is do a practice run. I've done a practice run on things. If it's a new finish, I will take regular quilting cotton and figure out my template or figure out something different. I'm almost 90% sure when I did this berry, I did one with just quilting cotton first because I didn't want to mess it up. So really that's it, is like I said, I just kind of practice, and the more I do, the better I get. And now I'm at the point where I can kind of figure out if there's something I want to finish a certain way. I've done enough that I can kind of figure out how to go about it. When I do a tutorial for you guys, it's never on my first try, right? These trees, this was 3 trees. I had one completely done before I even thought about how I would explain it to someone else. Berries, I had done several berries before I did a tutorial. I've done some of the hands-on design, like the block parties. I had mine all finished, and then my sister had stitched one, and I'm like, oh good, can I use that one to do a tutorial? Because I had to finish one first before I could explain it. So that's just kind of it. It's just practice. Where do you find all the objects you finish with? Everywhere. Some of them I just have. Some of them are things I've picked up over the years and thought, oh, that'll come in handy. And sometimes it does. And sometimes it ends up going back to Goodwill. I reuse a lot of things. If I have something that's a really good size, I'll know I can reuse that for multiple finishes, right? And sometimes it's as basic as an 8x10 frame. Like that gobble, I stick in an 8x10 frame. And the reason it's not in there right now is I use that frame for other things. And it stores much better as a little flat piece. So I will reuse things and adjust my stitching sometimes to fit. That's sometimes how I choose what size fabric I want to use is, well, if I stitched this on a 16, it would fit in this. But if I did it on a 14, it would be a little too big. If I did it on an 18, it would fit, but do I want to do it on an 18? Nah, I'll just find something different to finish it on. Yeah, I find everywhere. Goodwill has great frames sometimes they have trash, but sometimes they have good frames or unique finishing pieces that you can use. Are there any supplies you like to use for finishing? Yes. I brought down a couple things and I lost one. This is what I lost. So, thing I can't find is my flathead bodkin, B-O-D-K-I-N. You've seen me use this in tutorials many times. It looks a lot like this. This is something else. It's long like this and it has a little ball on one end, and then on the other hand it's flat and it has a little hole in it. And what it's meant for is, I bought it when I first made grime guards because that's what you use to run the elastic. You sew a seam and then you hook your elastic through this big slot and you push it through to get your elastic in. That thing is great for shoving stuffing in tight corners. It's flat. It's great for the bottom of drums and stand-ups when you can kind of sew your base on and leave a little hole and then just use that. It's kind of like a lot of people use like a chopstick, but it's flat. So it really works great. And I know, I was like, where is that? I used it during the spring mingle when I did my hands-on design finish to shove stuffing in small corners, and that's the last place I used it. So it's either in the office someplace or it got scooped up with all my stuff and plopped someplace. So I'm either gonna have to find it or buy a new one because that is a must for me. The other thing I use a lot is a point turner. This is a quilting point turner. Again, very inexpensive. I think it's Dritz. I'm sure I got mine at Joann's, but When you turn pillows, you can use this to get your points out. I like to use yarn in my pillow corners because it really, and in the bottoms of my berries, it really gets into these little sections to make the point stick out. So yarn, basic yarn. I buy a skein, it lasts forever. I cut it up into little bits and I stuff a little in there with this. My doll needle. This is a doll needle. They come in different sizes. So this is, I don't know, a 3-inch and a 5-inch. These are great because they're long. You can really use them when you're going around to lace something, because you, like a circle, you can get a lot on there and then pull the thread through. They're great for sewing the tops on berries because you can get from one side all the way to the other side to pull through. They're just very handy to have. I use that way more than I thought I would. This thing, which I never can remember if it's the compass or the protractor, because they're sold as a set, right? This was probably $3. I use this all the time for making circles. For circle finishes, you know, you've got the measurement here, you spin it around. I like to make a template first on a scrap of something, right? Like a file folder, a cereal box, whatever you have, and then you can kind of see if it's the right size and cut it down and get it just how you want it before you then use your mat board or foam core or whatever it is you're going to use. And that's what I use this for. I also have some circle templates I like to use that I should have grabbed. They're probably for scrapbooking, but it's like this flimsy piece with different size circles in it, but it only goes up to, I think, 3.5. I can get bigger with this. And then I use my Krenic cording tool all the time. You could also use it to make fly fish things. That's how they sell it too. But this is used for cording, which I use for a lot of finishes. I like to be able to make custom cording with matching colors. So I think this is the only one. Oh no, this one I have. I'm like, there's cording on a whole lot of stuff in this house. So like with this one, I was able to pull out some of the purple to add a different color. And it just makes it really affordable to get like a custom trim, right? You can buy a couple skeins of DMC and get it just how you want it. So I use the quarter a lot. And I think that's it for kind of tools. How do you get corners so flat on hard finishes? Sometimes it's luck. Sometimes a piece, you glue it down and it works great. And sometimes it does not work great. And when it doesn't work great, sometimes I will go in and put some extra glue on there and just kind of squish it around and get it to work. And sometimes I sew it. So you can see this one. I sewed it. I put some strong thread on a needle. I start from the top and I sew down. And then I just tie it off. This one was great because it was, you could really see because I used a white. So that way I'm able to get the corners in real tight. I think this is the only thing I still have with a ruffle on it. That's another one of those, has your style changed? My finishing style has changed, absolutely. I used to do a lot more kind of frilly things until I learned that that's not me. I'm more basic and simple and clean. So I have done a lot of refinishing over the years when I'll put stuff out and I'll be like, I'm gonna take that apart and redo it. I think I could make that match my style better. So a lot of things I happen to do now are very clean lines, clean trims, no ruffles, no flower bits. I just kind of stay away from that stuff now. It doesn't appeal to me as much. And finally, have you considered starting a finishing business? I get this question a lot. I have thought about it right before COVID. Like I was seriously thinking about it before COVID. And then after COVID, my husband now works from home. I don't have a set space. My craft area is a folding table. I have to put the sewing machine right on the corner or the whole thing jiggles. So the cats are in there all the time, right? It's not a room that I could shut the door and keep my stuff in there and keep animals away from other people's things. So that's one reason. The other reason is sometimes when you enjoy doing something and then you make it a business, you don't enjoy doing it anymore, right? We've all been there. So I think it would kind of take the fun out of it, and I wouldn't have as much time to do my own stitching and my own finishing. So instead, I will just do tutorials and teach you how to do it, because you can do it, right? If I can do it, anyone can do it. I don't have any experience with that kind of stuff. Like I said, I just kind of figured it out. So you can figure it out too. I will do the tutorials, and that way you can try it on your own. And once you get it, you'll be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make all kinds of pillows, or I'm gonna make everything into a drum. You know, I'll go through something when I do a different finish, and then I wanna do everything like that. Like, I'm gonna make 100 berries. So that's my answer to that, is will I ever do a finishing business? Probably not, honestly. It seems like a lot of work that would take away from the fun, and Emmy would be real mad if she couldn't be in there with me. It just boils down to Emmy. So that was the end. That was a lot of talking today. Usually my videos are about 30 minutes because that's about all I have in me. So it took me 30 minutes to gather all this stuff up. Probably take me longer than that to put it away. But thank you. I can't thank you enough. When I started doing Flosstube, I had been watching a lot of Flosstube, and I just kind of thought, well, I want to join the party. I want to talk about stitching. So, you know, you start a channel and you have no idea how it will do. And it took it took time to grow. And I know for a fact that one of the reasons that my channel has grown is because of the tutorials, right? I know a lot of people are visual learners. People always tell me I explain things well. Thank you. It's not, right? I don't do anything special. I'm just a stitcher, just like everyone else. And I love sharing this hobby and this craft and helping other people learn how to do things. To make it more enjoyable for them. So thank you very much for everyone who over the years has subscribed, for all the likes, for everything, all the comments. I know some people sometimes, have negative comments. You guys are all positive. I've never had anything like that. So thank you for everything. And here's to the next however many years and subscribers. So thank you guys. Bye.